Hello, everybody, all you aviation aficionados. As you can see, we got a full room in here today. Uh, we have Jerry Gardner, we have Daniel Flores, we have Goose, also known as Dave Levica, and we have Fred, and of course, myself spilling water on this. But I'm going to keep this out here on the side, and I'll grab my keyboard. Remember, if you're a subscriber during this show, you can text over here in the little chat area here. I'll just put up CHAT, and you'll see something pop up on your screen. So if you want to ask any questions, feel free to do so. If you're not a subscriber, you could just listen to the show and enjoy yourselves. Well, first, I'd like to say thank you to everybody that's out there that subscribes to our show. We've got over 30,000 subscribers, but we still don't have enough hours to even get close to monetization. It takes 4,000 hours, and we've only got 371 hours toward that. The math doesn't seem right to me, but that's what they keep telling me. So we're here with these aviation people. Daniel Flores over here, he's a producer, pilot. He has penned a book that's out that you can see about. And he's also got 2 movies out about his adventures in Afghanistan during his time over there with serving our country. We have Dave Levica over here. He's a former air traffic controller, retired now. He flies, who do you fly for?
2 families.
There you go. He flies 2 families. And over here we have retired air traffic controller Jerry Gardner. He's with us today. He worked at Houston Intercontinental. David worked at Houston Center, and we know Fred. He's over here, and Fred has worked all around the world, and he's been around before they made pencils. So, and I say that in a loving and dear way. Fred and I started this channel back in October, and we're real happy that we did. We're really enjoying the ride on this channel. So let's talk about a couple of things that are out there. We have BJ's coming up on February 6th for all you Houston air traffic controllers or anybody that wants to join in with us. The one over there on the Woodlands, I think it starts at 3:00. Is that that's correct? Right. Fred, do you have any before we get really into the nitty-gritty stuff?
We're looking forward to BJ's and how many people are going to join us there. Found a few more guys this week. One of them would love to join us, but right now he's living in Russia.
Oh, wow.
And the commute is kind of rough.
Got to dodge that incoming.
He'd love to do the podcast, but their 4G is only up for a few minutes a day, and he'll listen to things later on. But, hopefully he'll be well. His visa runs out in June, and maybe he can join us at BJ's then. Looking forward to this week and how many guys will show up.
Yeah. So, Daniel, would you like to tell us a little bit about your experiences with ATC or the aviation community?
Oh, for those that don't know, I flew airplanes and helicopters. My first aviation job was with U.S. Customs back in 1999. I got on with them here in Houston, flying the Citation jet and the A-Star helicopter. And with that, the first, interaction I ever had with ATC here in Houston is we were based out of Hooks Airport. And when I first showed up, one of the missions of our Citation jet was to intercept aircraft coming up from South America, across the Gulf of Mexico, and even down from Mexico up into the United States. And that's when I first found out about Omaha launches. Our call sign was Omaha. And here in Houston, well, they had to teach me all this, obviously, there with Customs, that if we got launched on a target coming up from the south, to get out of the Hooks and the Houston airspace, we would call out whichever Omaha 1, 2, 3, or 4 launches, and that basically gave ATC a quick flight plan to get us out of the airspace, away from all the incoming traffic, and up headed to the south and all. And actually, it was mainly for instrument departures. And we actually used it once to go down to Galveston. An airplane had just come up from across the Gulf of Mexico. And we got launched on it through the clouds, IFR, basically straight across Intercontinental's Bravo and Hobby's Bravo, straight down to down to Galveston, Shoals Field. And from there, we got out of the clouds, and we ended up, canceling IFR. The problem we had was when they were giving us vectors for the approach down there before we broke out VMC, the traffic had already made its approach, and it was a King Air, had already made its approach to Shoals. And by the time we got out of the clouds and canceled IFR, we made a straight beeline for the actual Shoals Field, and that target had made a low pass, and he departed to the north under the cloud deck, and we did not catch him again. We had our radar on. Yeah, it was basically that load of dope came in to the Houston area from the south on that one. But it was really great how ATC was Johnny on the spot, getting us IFR down there across everybody's airspaces, and then down to VMC. But the sad fact was that even with as much help as they were giving us, we missed that target. So that was my first experience with ATC, Omaha launches, law enforcement launches here in Houston. And after that, I worked with Houston ATC with doing warrants with the helicopter, following bad guys all through Houston, the Houston area, and just being all in Intercontinental's hair, because as it would always be, the bad guys were always doing their deals on the departure end of Intercontinental or the departure end of Hobby, or the approach end of either one. It was always in their space. But yeah, both Houston Tower and then Hobby Towers, man, they were absolutely professional in getting us where we needed to be, and staying out of the big boys' hair as they're departing. But there were several close calls where they would say, Omaha, you absolutely need to stay at 3,000 feet where you're at, because here comes, the KLM flight. I think it's at 5 o'clock every day, 4 o'clock. It's departing, that 747 departing. And sure enough, I'm sitting there at a hover, 3,000 feet. And here comes that big boy coming right at me. I'm like, man, you better be turning. And then sure enough, the last second he's turning. And then there was another time I was headed back from over Intercontinental Airport back to Conroe at about 2,500 feet. And they said, hey, Omaha, I think it was a United jet was coming. He says, he'll be coming at you, but he'll be going underneath you. I'm like looking at him, and he's pointed right at me. And I'm like, are you guys sure this guy is going to level off? And he's going, oh, yeah, don't worry. I'm like, man, I was pedaling as fast as I could with that helicopter trying to get out of the way. But he ended up below me. But once again, they're so big, and when they're coming at you, all that. And then I did a lot of stuff.
Dave, that's a very good segue into something that happened just a couple of days ago. Helicopters and live aircraft on final approach really don't mix very well, right? The environment, it's got to be always eyes out the window, safety conscious, right? So we've had several incidents in aviation over the last, I guess, 3 weeks now with the private jet, this American airline. We had a guy that was walking on the tarmac. He get run over by a car, one of the employees. I guess he looked right when he should have been looking left. Wow. It's kind of like walking around in Hong Kong, you step off the curb and you're looking to the left while they're driving on the other side of the road there, right? So you got to really have your head in the out the window when you're working at it. But the reason why I bring it up is it seems that as soon as these things happen, in the aviation community. The finger pointing starts immediately. It's like everybody's got the answer to this thing, right? It's kind of like, somebody was accused of stealing that Coke bottle over there, so they must have done it, right? Well, you don't know if they did it. It could have been a really low-level person in front of the guy stole the Coke bottle, but you only saw him, right? You don't know exactly what you know until you find out the whole story. And what I'm trying to get at is the media loves to do sensationalizing. That's how they get their points. That's how they make their money. And it's not right, because the media and the news shouldn't be telling you how to think, right? You should wait for everything to come out. NTSB does an amazing job. They are the guys that can take a plane that was once smithereens and put it back together again, looking like almost what it looked like. And they take the black boxes, the altimeters, every electrical wire, they look it over, they give it the whole 9 yards, and they come out with a very thorough and good conclusion. So there's an investigation that goes on during that entire time. And everybody that has been involved with that aircraft, guess what? They're going in and giving a deposition, or they're going in and getting questioned. And to have you accused of something that you didn't do, and you do a very good job, that's unsettling. It really is unsettling. It's a lot more pressure than somebody in this kind of business really needs to be in. So my idea is to kind of sit back. Let's wait for all the cards to be on the table. Let's turn them over and see what happened. Speculating on what happened, it's no big deal, but let's not point any fingers and, pass around any names. That's just not right. You guys have any thoughts on that?
I'd like to talk to Jerry about a little more with the Omaha flights, and I might have lost a few hair follicles at that time. Just a few. But I remember it got to the point where some of the controllers would start flying with you guys to see what you had to put up with.
Yeah.
And we were having problems putting up with you, because various times we'd be issuing traffic that we weren't talking to, and no mode C readout on it, but just a primary target, and issuing traffic, and all of a sudden a pilot's telling me that it's a citation and it's sitting at an IFR altitude.
Yeah.
And well, that's not exactly the words I used.
Yes.
Yeah, it really confused us, and we didn't know who they were. That's where the altercations would come up, and somebody came up with the idea, well, maybe if some of us flew with you guys, we could see what your problems were, what you were trying to accomplish. It helped improve things, but when it first started, it was a hell of a surprise.
Yeah, it was.
We also had the issue with VHF and UHF.
Yes.
Yes.
We had.
Am I talking to
Yeah.
or am I talking to VHF, or
We had that. I worked at Hobby Tower back in the 80s, and I remember one time you guys were chasing a guy down final to Hobby, but you would call us on the UHF frequency and say, we're on UHF, transmit UHF only. So we would have to unkey the VHF to talk to you and say, we're following this guy. And it was a Blackhawk, I think it was a Blackhawk, and a citation, following this guy down final. And of course, they were pretty smart about, going as slow as they could, and the citation couldn't go that slow, but they had both there. He wasn't getting away. And so they got the guy. He landed on the 1-2 right, now 1-3 right. But they would do that where we would only transmit them on, which is like this accident where they're talking about the positions being combined and the media is making such a big deal about it. And it's like, from what I heard, that the helicopter was on UHF anyway. So if that's true, they wouldn't hurt him whether it was combined or not.
Right.
The combination, that's a fairly common practice. We had a helicopter position at Hobby that we never even opened. We had a separate frequency for it, but they did that during the oil boom of the early 80s. And, it just wasn't cost effective to have it open. So this thing that happened at DCA, like I say, the media is making a big deal about the positions. you know, why wasn't that open? That was standard practice. And even if it was, they were already on different frequencies anyway, UHF and VHF. So neither one is going to hear what the other guy's saying. So that's almost a moot point. But
So, you know, and even then, your tower control, you've seen this. I mean, at night, doing the circling approach, you got your hands full of airplane. You're going to go around circle. I mean, you're going to be busy.
Very.
A lot. You just increased or doubled or tripled your workload now to get around to the other runway. Night, there's all these lights, and if that aircraft is at the same altitude as you are, and they're coming at you, and it's a collision course, guess what? You're going to blend into the background. You're not going to see him, and he's not going to see you. He's going to think you're an obstruction light or somebody's headlight out there. Maybe you're on a high elevation. You don't know because it's not moving. It's on. It's in your windscreen, and you're looking up. That's just an antenna, right?
Yep.
So
That is so true.
circling approaches at night, I don't know. It's kind of difficult to do. So who was I talking to yesterday about circling approaches? Somebody was telling me that.
Ron Holt.
Well, yeah, that's right. He said that. No. Well, I don't think it was Don. I think it was somebody else. That they don't allow circling approaches at night anymore because of some kind of an incident like that. So.
Yeah.
The airlines, I think, have gotten rid of it.
yeah,
I know our practice in GA, it seems to be more and more common that circling approaches are bad.
Yeah.
You imagine going into LaGuardia and you get a circling approach over the water? It's like going in a black hole right there, right?
Exactly.
You don't know what you're going to
Of
come
course,
up
that
with.
was not a huge circle
Yeah.
in the traditional circle.
Well, your KLM pilot
Well, yeah.
on your last story back there,
yeah.
you were
Well,
telling
they
us
had
about that wing strike.
They also had that Learjet crash at Teterboro.
Right.
That he was circling from runway 6 to runway 1, only because they don't have an approach to runway 1 because of Newark. You know, there was a lot more to that crash when you hear the whole tape. It was pretty sad on the pilot's part, but
You could look that up in the NTSB and get the entire story.
it's an interesting story. But it was a circling approach. I always laughed at that you know, on the airline pilots, you know, they'll say circling in VMC only. I'm like, well, how else are you going to do it? You know, it's like I don't know, but yeah, more and more people just don't do it. In fact, that first guy, that first Blue Streak refused it. He said, "No, I'm not going to do it." So the second guy that had the collision, you know, he was just trying to help out the tower. He said, "Oh yeah, we can do it." So
I remember that approach going into LaGuardia, and I was in the jump seat with this crew that was not familiar with it, and he didn't have the runway, didn't want to have the runway, didn't want to turn in. The control said, "You need to turn in," and I told him the tasty bread sign. Go for the tasty bread sign and turn left. There used to be a big I don't know if it's still there, but a big tasty bread sign for the factory. Yeah.
I think going back to what you said earlier, Bob, with the advent of social media, everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah.
But you go, I bet you the baggage handler back in Wichita hasn't, you know, I mean, he's got an opinion. How does he feel right now?
Yeah, and
Did
he gets
I do
his
something wrong?
They get their expertise by osmosis because they show up at the airport every day, right?
But I mean, everybody's going to be looked at.
Yeah.
I feel bad for the controller because, you know, people are saying, well, why didn't he do this? And you know, that controller's sitting there right now thinking, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? You know?
Yeah.
And it's like,
You could hear in the audio
yeah.
when he said, "Oh gosh," or something like that. When he saw it, yeah, that his voice. Wow.
I've always said the worst person the controller can be left with in a situation like this is himself.
Yeah.
Because you own to your quarterback the hell out of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It just keeps it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I do think next week there'll be a few supervisor positions open at National Airport.
Well, I don't know. You saying that could have been standard practice? That could have been in their SOP to do that. You know, so things will get rewritten, looked at, readjusted. There might be some time on the street for somebody, or maybe not. We don't know. We don't know who was who was what. But
as of right now, they shut down the helicopter routes there as of yesterday or the day before. All the helicopter routes there in the NCR have been shut down.
Yeah, that there was a captain or a commander or somebody that was on television the other day, and they were saying that the helicopter was a couple of 100 feet or 100 feet above what he was supposed to be. So maybe he had the wrong altimeter. Was he issued the wrong altimeter? You don't know. He could have been following all the rules.
Yeah.
There's going to be a lot of pieces.
And then you
Yeah.
might be able to answer this. I got a question about the NVG, the night vision goggles. If they're not sure whether they were wearing them or not, they think they were. But, from my understanding, they were kind of designed for, finding terrorists in the mountains of Afghanistan in the dark. Flying over a city with all these lights. Wouldn't that affect what they're
Oh, yes,
seeing?
it does. It blooms it out.
It's called a washout, right?
Yeah, it washes out. So, and then you have no depth perception. It's literally what you were saying, Rob, about that light. Is that a tower? Is it an airplane or what? Because all the lights are the same colors under goggles. There is no depth perception whatsoever, so you can't tell if is it closer or is it further. Is this light closer or farther away? Now this light's brighter, but that's a red light. And NVG's goggles on the spectrum that they amplify light at, red comes out brighter than a blue light or anything like that. And LED lights, you can't see LED lights under goggles. So all these towers here in Houston that have switched over from incandescent bulbs to LEDs, goggles don't pick those up until the very last second. You don't see those and all. And then also with the Blackhawk, you've got structural limitations that you have big blind spots in a Blackhawk. So
I was going to ask you, because the Blackhawks, if I remember right,
it's side by side.
or side by side,
Mhm.
but you have more vision from like head down. Maybe
No,
and
it's got a big dash.
right.
And
But then above that, don't you have some like spotter windows?
the
or
greenhouse
whatever
lights, or the greenhouse windows. But
you can't.
I mean, to try and
Yeah.
look
exactly.
straight up, you're not gonna be able to. You can, but I can't. I would have to turn my head up like this, even with the Apache, because you've got the battery pack for the goggles,
Right.
the back of the seat and such. You can't do that. The big things are what we call, what we would refer to as the A pillars on a car.
Right.
Where on the Blackhawk they're big, and then it's got two pillars in the front. You've got a lot of blind spots in the Blackhawk and such. That and with the goggles, like I said, they've got their limitations also. Trying to fly goggles over the city at night is a very it's difficult with goggles. Most of the guys EMS that I fly with, they prefer not to use goggles over Houston. I do. I've got several thousand hours flying goggles, so you're looking through the goggles, and then I look up underneath them to see lights or colors of lights and something that I may not see with the goggles, and then look back down through the goggles. You've got to do that. And plus, here in Houston, I tell guys that are new to the area, if you're going to be flying over Houston at night with or without goggles, don't dip below 1,500 feet. There are a lot of towers out here, and whether the light's on or not, you won't see them.
Yeah, I was looking for some of those shots you showed me with the green in them. I don't see them coming up right now. You did have some night vision stuff in there, and I was going to try to show it to the audience. Let me see if I could kind of run it by.
Yeah.
Share my screen.
Wasn't there a new crash about a year ago with a helicopter hitting a tower that had
Yeah, that was just last October, I guess it was. Absolutely very, very sad on that. But yes,
Who's that?
there's me. Yeah. Back in the 1900s. Those are goggles right there. And then, but yes, that one, everything, well, it's basically like I just said, you don't fly over Houston at night less than 1,500 feet. The flight, the direction that helicopter was coming from the east to the west, city of Houston, the downtown buildings, and that tower, they would have blended in perfectly. Never would have, she would never would have seen that tower. And then it only had the top, the middle, and the bottom lights. It all would have blended in. It all would have blended in. It would have been extremely difficult.
And it was a fairly new tower.
It was what?
It was a fairly new tower that was.
No, the tower had been there for years. it was just purchased by a different group, and for whatever reason, the middle lights, or the lights at every 100 feet, they were not operational. The NOTAM had stated that the lights were not operational with the tower. They were, but only the bottom, the middle, and the top. So yeah, everything in between was invisible.
I question on that particular accident was she was flying tours all day long, and I question whether fatigue was involved. If it's flying a helicopter downtown and you're from Houston, I'm sure you're familiar with where all the towers are.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she was familiar too. I had a flight instructor back when I was doing my instrument rating back in the 80s, or actually the 70s, late 70s. She killed herself hitting the tower doing a pipeline route. And it was because she had worked till late that night. She was a police dispatcher, and then she got up early in the morning to fly this pipeline route. This is down in Florida, and they flew it. It was a triangular route. They went up to like Gainesville, and I'm not sure where all they went. But she'd had an observer that was Florida Power and Light on the right seat, and she would always be to the left of the power lines. Well, this one day that he wanted to go the route the opposite direction, so it put her on the other side of the power lines. And she used to talk about this antenna. It was a ham radio antenna that was right next to it. She knew it was there, but she hit it. And killed them both. You know, I think that, fatigue plays a lot more.
Oh yes, it does.
In
complacency.
A lot of these accidents, and what they probably gets credit for. And I'm guessing, here we all have our opinions, like we're talking about what happened, but she'd been doing that route all day, and now she hits it this time. It's like,
several things, on the investigation afterwards. Yeah, she'd been flying it. She was doing the exact same route she did during the daytime, but the key factors were there was traffic coming from her right side. Tower called it out. She was looking, and you can tell on the track, she just veered ever so slightly to the left, right at the tower. So she may have been looking to the right for that traffic and never saw the tower.
That was Robinson, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a Robinson. Yeah. That was very, very sad. Very sad.
I don't know if anybody out there can see these pictures that I'm trying to get up online. I don't know why they're not coming up. If you don't see them, if somebody could maybe text me and let me know, or can look at it on the phone, actually, and cheat it down up there. But thank you for sharing that with us. That's a very interesting story, and I think that we've pretty much covered it. Anybody else want to talk about this media sensationalization and how much a burden it is for the working person that's trying to keep their job and do a great job? Because anybody that's in this business, is always very passionate about the work that they do, and that's why they're in it, to provide the.
There are so many factors that are that we don't know. So many things that we don't know, and that's the general public that doesn't fly, and they get so many phone calls and emails. People, what about this? What about goggles and all this sort of stuff? I'm like, bro, we don't know. We don't know. Were they on goggles or not? Did that play a factor? We just don't know. Let it play out. But everybody wants to know right now. And the most sensational story that comes out is the one that gets the most airtime, and then people run with it.
That's right.
And that's yeah.
Especially if the person that's telling it has just an iota of information about aviation, and they say it so well and sounds so good, right?
Yes. Way better than I do. That some of the stuff they were saying, it was a check ride or training flight or check ride. That really has nothing. We're always doing training in the military on that route. I mean, she could have been getting a checkout on that route, and she probably did it that day. I don't know. And then now they're doing it at night, and that's how the military, customs, everybody else does. It's like, we're going to tell you about the route, and then I'm going to show you during the daytime, and then we're going to do it in the daytime, and then we're going to do it at night. And now I'll sign you off. You're checked out on running this helicopter route through the NCR.
I just think we ought to have a little respect for the people that were involved and the families before we start throwing out blame
big time,
without knowing the whole picture.
Yeah.
So Jack is texting in. He says he wanted to know what your name was, because anyway,
Oh.
we introduced Daniel at the very beginning, and you don't really want to ask me because I always call him Dave.
Yeah.
But there is some information on the that I posted about Daniel on. I think it's on the community posts, and Jack says hello to you guys. It's good to see you all.
Hey.
Hi, Jack. Don't say that around the airport.
That's right. That's right.
But yes, Jack, my name is Daniel Flores, and I'd worked 21 years for Customs and Border Protection, flying Citation jet and the A-Star helicopter, chasing drug runners all over the world, down South Texas, here in Houston, all over the United States. I was also an Apache helicopter pilot, flying for the reserves, the Apaches up here in Conroe, Texas. I did that for also about 21 years, and currently I fly the EMS helicopter for the HCA hospital system here in Houston. But I'm a float pilot. I fly the 145 and the 407 all over Houston, North Texas, Louisiana, places like that. So that's pretty much my background there.
Yeah, and Daniel's giving me some pretty cool pictures of his career. I'm looking at one of these Apaches firing off a couple of
rockets, 2.75-inch rockets.
Yeah.
In combat. I was in Afghanistan in 2006, flying the Apache helicopter, and that's where, yeah.
You were there with the SEAL team, wasn't it? That went down in the.
I was there 6 months after Operation Red Wings. We were briefed on Operation Red Wings when we showed up. All we were told at that time was a SEAL reconnaissance patrol had been compromised, ambushed, and the Chinook helicopter that went to rescue them was shot down afterwards, and that they used the blood chit to get what we now know as Mark Luttrell, and rescued him, a week after all that happened. That was July of 2005. I showed up to Afghanistan in 2006, January. And so we were briefed on that, but basically we were briefed on the Korengal Valley, which ended up being a tremendous amount of fighting and shooting there all year long.
So here's a good question for Control. So when you came in and out, flew in and out of there, did you have somebody telling you what to do or where to go, and then that was gone, right? Then how did that work for you?
It was the Air Force had control of Bagram Airfield, is where we were mainly based out of. I did a couple stints in Jalalabad, on the east side of Afghanistan by the Khyber Pass. But it was Air Force controllers the whole time in the towers and such. So flying with them, all controllers, I would imagine they're trained the same. And so really the only differences on a military air base there in combat was whenever there was incoming fire, they would shut down the air base because you don't want to be coming in as there's rounds are coming in or rounds going out. And whenever the C-17s or the different aircraft had different ways of coming into and out of that air base. And that's, like I said, the C-17s, the cargo aircraft, would pretty much come straight in. But I mean, we're talking descents out of altitude, way out of altitude, spiraling down, and then driving in a very short base to final. And then the same thing on their departures. They're doing just a max effort climb all the way up to the flight levels on those. The fighter jets, they come in and always do their overhead 360 brake. Got to watch on that. Us helicopter guys, like it is even here in the States, we stayed away from the flow of fixed wing traffic. But flying with Customs before I went there, or civilian airspace, I should say, when I got there, plane speak is what we shot for. None of this, overhead overhead initial for the overhead, that sort of stuff that you would never know on if you didn't find the military or on a military base. I came in on one mission very, very low on gas, extremely low. Tower tried telling me that, I'm going to vet you around to land behind an incoming C-17. I said, negative, minimum fuel. And
that wouldn't get the control's attention. It's emergency fuel that'll get the
Yeah.
Minimum fuel doesn't say anything, but I want to be number one.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said like, well, can he still tried to vector me. I was like, no, I have to come in right now immediately. And
Now you're starting to talk the right lingo.
Yeah.
You're getting close.
I didn't want to declare an emergency. I
you
didn't want to, but you're right.
paperwork.
And then so we ended up, he put me straight in. I landed right, I say in front of the C-17, but he was maybe on a mile final when I just came straight across, perpendicular across the runway.
He loved that rotor wash, didn't he?
C-17, it
True,
wouldn't matter to him.
But you know, but you just gave us a very good example
Mhm.
of what can happen when they're I don't want the paperwork.
Yeah.
See, so you're thinking about that rather than flying the plane. And we don't know it's a real emergency. You're saying
Yeah.
See, one point
emergency fuel.
about the paperwork, because my career in the FAA, and then I was a contract controller at Conroe. There's seldom ever any paperwork unless there's some kind of violation or accident. It's like basically it's call us on the phone. Hey, you okay? Everything fine? Yeah, everything's fine. Click, hung up, and because as controllers, we don't want paperwork either.
Yeah.
Now we have to log that you did that, but what is the reg say? You have 10 days to file the paperwork if you're requested.
If you're requested, yeah.
And most of the time, unless there's an accident or something, there's seldom. So pilots get all freaked out about doing that, and then pilots a lot of times die because they didn't do that.
Yeah.
Just because they're afraid of paperwork. It's like most of the time there's not paperwork
It's usually
involved.
just a phone call too.
It's just a
Oh.
phone call. It's just, hey man, what happened? Are you okay? Everything? Did we learn something from it? Yeah, we learned something too. Okay, good. Let's be careful next time. Whatever. So.
That was one of the big deals.
Avianca, the one that crashed in New York, that was all about phraseology.
Yeah.
We're getting low on fuel. You know what that? Just what
Exactly,
Bob said. What Bob
exactly.
said earlier. That means I want to be number one. That's what that means to a controller. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Sure.
If you're pushing a lot of airplanes,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
you're not going to bend over for this guy to move all these other airplanes out of the way. They're priority, right?
Yeah.
I mean, first come, first serve.
And minimum fuel by the book says he cannot accept any undue delay. That's
Right.
exactly what it says.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're going to put him in front of somebody that he wouldn't have been in front of. You just, that, hey, we can't put this guy in holding or something like that.
Yeah.
But when you say emergency fuel, boom, everybody is out of your way and you're number one.
And you get the red carpet greased.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing I found out with customs flying here in Houston, what I ended up doing is when I knew we were going to be doing a surveillance and it was going to be on the departure end of the Intercontinental, I just get on the landline. I still have the phone number right now to the the controller there at Houston Tower, and say, hey, look, today around 2:00 we're going to be pretty much a warrant right on the departure end about 2:00 and all, and then thanks. When I show up and I check in, he's like, all right, I'm waiting for you. We'll be up top. And then if I know we're going to be doing what I called a law enforcement action, as soon as there was a break on the radio tracks, hey, look, in about 5 minutes, we're going to be doing a law enforcement action. I'm going to be coming straight out of 3,000 feet, max rate of descent over the spot I'm circling right now. And I try to give them a heads up, give me 5 minutes and expect this. And then sure enough, I'm like, hey, Omaha, law enforcement descent immediately. And he's like, all right, you're clear, man. I'm just busting on down and then chasing the bad guys.
Normally, you guys really weren't that big of a problem, even off the departure end. You'd be at 4,500 or 5,500 feet. So you're below the arrivals and above the departures, and you just thread the needle, basically. Yeah. I mean, it was something you had to watch all the time, but it wasn't like it was, you guys were doing your job, and that's what, we knew you had to do it, so.
Well, anybody else want to drop anything in there, or we pretty much
reference to the
good to
fuel,
go? Oh,
I want to say there was a Clipper 1 flight coming into Kennedy.
Wow.
Clipper, yeah. Clipper. The first guys to cross the water.
Yeah. And,
commercial.
Yeah, they had Pan Am 1, Pan Am 2.
In fact, look at that dish over there. That's a dish for the commemorative, all the way in the corner. Commemorative flight to the Philippines.
The real Clipper.
Okay, so see what you got to steal when you leave. But he's coming in, weather's up and down at Kennedy. He goes into a hole, comes out, goes into a hole, comes out, never says anything. Now he starts going in, and the weather goes down to Kennedy again. and he tells him, okay, he wants to divert over to Newark. Starts to go over to Newark, weather comes up at Kennedy. He turns around to go back into Kennedy. But now he's coming across the numbers at Kennedy, doesn't say anything, touches down. When he touches down, he has to request a tug. That's what you.
Oh, that's minimum fuel.
That's minimum fuel.
Yeah, there you go. Minimum fumes.
Yeah, when they request, when they
I saw it on YouTube.
they requested the tug, they started asking questions.
Well, for some reason, I'm not getting that question, Jack. I know you're asking a question. If you want to shoot it to me on my phone, that would be better. I don't see it in the chat box here. I don't know why. It should have come up. That must mean that there's a few people out there that aren't getting their questions answered. But if they can post it in the community section on the on the YouTube page, we will definitely get to them next time around. And I can't answer the phone, Jack, because I'm in the middle of a broadcast. So I'll just, if you can text it, I could do that.
But working also with, after 9/11, U.S. Customs picked up the NCR TFR security mission with the Citation jet. And so we were based out of Reagan and in Citation, and let's call it 2002. I was there, and it was a front had just come through. At that point, all of the calls that we gotten in the morning on the morning shift were mainly like, oh, get ready to launch Omaha. There's a unknown rider coming up from the south low level. And it was always ended up being the traffic helicopter. And sometimes the police department helicopter would be not doing the right squawks. Everything was still developing at that time. And I was there that morning after a front had come through, perfectly clear skies, ice cold. And one of the guys, one of the pilots had said, like, this is the perfect day for somebody to bust the TFR. And sure enough, we get a call, launch, guys run out there. We're like firemen running down there to the Citation. As we're running out there saying, yeah, there's an unknown rider, 11,500 headed eastbound. He's over Dulles, headed eastbound to the White House, and he's not talking. And we're like, oh, shoot. So we're going to take off on the runway straight north. Everybody's landing to the short, the other runway that is a little bit to the northwest. Man, that controller was he was doing an auction. It was, he was talking so fast. We're taxiing, still getting the INS all lined up and everything. And he says, he called us Homeland. He goes, Homeland, can you take off on this runway? We're like, yeah. He goes, all right, you're cleared between the one that just landed and there's another one on like a 2-mile final or whatever. And we're like, all right, here we go, man. We just a rolling takeoff, bust on out, fly, climbed up to 11,000. The radar we had in the Citation jet was the F-16 radar. So we hook them up on the radar, get with our controller that was with ATC's controllers. And he said, okay, the guy's still not talking. He is currently, he's just right off your nose here, about 5 miles. And so we got him on the radar, our radar. We had him hooked up, had him on the FLIR, and it was a Beach 18, the tail dragger with the 2 tail fins. It looks like almost like corrugated metal on it. Yeah. So he's flying along, and he's headed right for the White House. And we're like, oh my God. We started rolling up on him, and they said, Omaha, back off. The F-16s are fixing to thump him. And we're like, oh, shoot. So didn't mean to cuss. So, oh, shoot. TV. And so we back off, and sure enough, the F-16, they thump them on the vertical, and then they thump them on the horizontal, and they're throwing flares the whole time. And we're going like, all right. And then they call back. So, okay, the guy's still not talking. They're about to go kinetic, and you need to back off by at least 5 miles. And we're like, oh my God, they're fixing to light this guy up. Where is the wreckage going to end up?
Right.
And we're like, wow, this is really wild watching this. And then about a minute later, they call, okay, Omaha, we got in touch with the pilot. You're to follow him to across the bay from Annapolis is that airfield.
Navy Andrews.
What would you call it?
Navy Andrews.
Nope, it was across east of across from Annapolis, across the water. There's an airport, civilian airport there. So anyway, so we follow him all the way down there. We land behind him. He taxis up to the FBO, and well, we're still taxiing up, and the PIC says, "All right, boys, get your gear on." So I'm, throw my body armor. I've got my shotgun, and we've got our pistols and stuff. We stop, hop out of the jet. He's stopped, and I hop out, and the Maryland State Police, man, all 8'10" of them, two of them. I mean, those guys are huge. They come up and they go, "You're the experts on this. You go up to that airplane first." I'm like,
Well, I got one more question. This
yeah.
one's from Jack. He got the text to me. Daniel, he says, I was working Eagle Lake sector one night when an aircraft came out of Houston area southbound along Gulf Coast line. DEA citation jet gave chase and caught the aircraft. Caught the aircraft on a runway near Coast and near Corpus, probably in the mid-90s. Sounds like Daniel may not have been with the DEA at the time.
No, I was not with.
Okay.
Then it was U.S. Customs. I did not get on with Customs until 1999, but there was a lot of flights like that, Jack. That the previous guys, you would have been working with them because that's exactly what they did. Remember back then they had the big aerostat down there in Matagorda.
Oh, yeah. That was,
Yeah. 15,000 feet was the yeah. So
they had several of them along.
but that was before my time, Jack. I was. Yeah.
Well, I really do have to wrap this up. Daniel, great having you here today. Plug your book and your movies.
My book is called South of Heaven, My Year in Afghanistan. And the book, the movie is called Above the Best. And the other movie that I helped produce is called Apache Warrior. Both movies, well, Above the Best is from my book. It is actual footage that I took from the Apache helicopter in Afghanistan in combat. So yeah, there you go.
Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
coming on. Dave, you got anything you want to throw
All good.
out there? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Jerry,
Yes, sir.
anything for you?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So, Fred, last words?
Same time next week.
All right. Yeah. Thank you all for joining with us. And as soon as I get a little bit better at this podcast thing and able to get these cameras to work correctly, it's going to even be a better show. So thank you for joining. You all have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Cheerios.
Hold it. Oh, there we go. And. All right, guys.